Hello and welcome back to Learn It from a Layman. I am Carl Christensen. I am joined today by Johnny, Dr. Johnny, and Tim. I shake middle schoolers down for their lunch money cocks. Who, in case those of you that listen to us frequently haven't made it to the end of some of our podcasts recently, where we've said that we are now doing YouTube videos as well. So these aren't just audio podcasts; they're also on YouTube. Tim, this is Tim's first foray into the digital medium of video. So,
as you can see, I went to great lengths to prepare my appearance for maximum appeal.
yes, yes, of course. That's why we pay you the big bucks, Tim.
That's right. All of it.
Speaking of big bucks, today's podcast, we're going to talk about the basics of budgeting. And before we get into the basics of budgeting, a little bit of podcast news one more time, other than the YouTube thing, which I don't really care if you guys watch us on YouTube or not. We have cracked, according to some metrics, the top 5% of podcasts for downloads in the first week. So, how does that make you feel, Johnny?
That makes me feel great in some metrics.
It makes me feel like there's a lot of podcasts out there.
Yeah, see our podcast on statistics and skewed distributions to figure out how we could be in the top 5%. But it is true that our podcasts, some of our podcasts do quite well. And so hopefully you guys find these useful. So today, budgeting. So budgeting, we've talked about this in the past, many years ago, actually, on this podcast. But today we're going to talk in depth about individual items in a budget and how they can affect your bottom line, and just good insight into ways to improve your budgeting skills and free up money, hopefully. So let's talk about it from the top. So you've got your necessities, right? Your mandatory items, your non-discretionary spending, if you will. Those things, I think a lot of people kind of just take for granted. They just fork the money over for the car insurance, the homeowner's insurance, the gas, the electric, the water, whatever it is, and they don't really think about it.
Well, dads are always thinking about turning off lights, though.
There you go. And with three fathers.
Turn up the thermostat, yep.
That's right. Don't mess with that thermostat. Correct. But beyond the thermostat, we'll get to that one. Let's start with our friend, the internet, which, by the way, we are all using right now. So it is a necessity. It is mandatory. Johnny is not using the internet. He is somehow connected to us online without an internet connection. No, the internet is, in most places, there are multiple options. And this is, I guess, a general budget insight, of course, is see if there are options. Internet is it is still a space where there's competition, at least in the United States. There are usually multiple providers. And when you look at multiple providers, you can then play off their desire to make a profit and to get you as a customer. And so what I've done in the past is you get a quote from one, you get a quote from the other, then you haggle. And some of you question whether or not haggling is a good idea. The internet, so any of these bills that happen monthly, those are the ones you really want to go at, because those are the ones that over the course of your life, or certain years at a minimum, are going to affect your bottom line, hundreds, thousands of dollars. So the internet can be one where you knock off $10 or $15 or $20 a month with not really suffering any downside. So I guess as a software engineer, let me tell you, first of all, a lot of you probably wonder how much bandwidth do you need when you're looking at getting internet speeds. You see, oh, do I need 1 gigabit download speed? And the reality is you do not. Unless there's like 8 of you streaming like either gamers or streaming video simultaneously.
Like mining Bitcoin or something.
Yeah, well, that's processor heavy. I don't actually think that's particularly heavy on the bandwidth of the internet.
Okay.
But unless you have a very large household and all of you are constantly streaming movies or podcasts, you don't need a gig. You don't. I'm a software engineer. I believe we have 500 megabytes up or down. So there's download speed and upload speed. Most of you probably do not care about upload speed. So when you're looking at internet and your budget, toss upload speed. It's not important for most of you, unless you are like a social media influencer or something. You're not uploading large files to the internet, and so upload speed is almost irrelevant to you. If you have fiber, so fiber is one of the different varieties of internet out there, right? The upload and the download speed is the same. That's how the technology works. It's a fiber line. But download speed, you can cut it down to even as much as 100 megabytes per second and really not suffer any degradation in quality of video content or anything, unless you have, like I said, 3 or 4 or 5 people streaming video simultaneously. Because really what you need is somewhere between 10 and 20 megs in order to stream a movie these days in high definition. And at least the way that most of these services are set up nowadays. So questions about that? No,
I think that's a good reminder too. And also, with these companies, a lot of times they'll give you a big discount to get you to, buy for the first year the internet, and then they'll increase the price the second year, knowing that people like me, I'm too lazy to go out and like look for something else. But like Carl's saying, if you put in a little bit of effort, and get a different quote from somebody else and tell your current provider what that is, and that you want to cancel, they'll generally do something to try to keep you. So it just is about doing a little bit of work. And it's actually not as complicated now to switch internet providers as it has been in the past. It used to be a lot more complicated, but I think it's a lot easier now.
Absolutely. Yep. It's a little bit of overhead. It's a nuisance. But if you can take a little nuisance and you get $200 a year for a one-time nuisance of a couple days of having to switch the passwords on your devices, that's about all you usually have to do. So, yeah. If you just need to, when you see your bill bump on the internet up to the non-promotional price, then you just go in and you either call them or chat with them and say, look, hey, I've got this other offer from this other provider. Do you want match? And very frequently they will. And if they say no, then just threaten to cancel. When you get to their cancellation team, they will match. They will not lose you. Believe you me, I've done it many times. And I'm a software engineer. I can't go without the internet for like a split second, or I can't do my job. So, but you've got to be willing to go all the way. Take them to the edge, and then they will be like, they will cave. Okay, that's the internet. Moving on. Phone. This is another same type of thing. Many people don't know how much data they need for their phone. So they just kind of take I need unlimited. And by the way, parenthetically and small aside, Johnny and I may have gone on a vacation recently, and Johnny may have paid for international roaming, which I wouldn't have done, but then it turned out it was actually really smart and super useful. So take all of this with a bit of a grain of salt. But the phone, on most of the time, it's useful to know, okay, how much data do I normally use, right? If I use, so for example, I know that I use less than 4 gigs every month with essentially no exceptions. Like and how? Well, because I'm on Wi-Fi all the time. So if I'm watching a video on my cell phone or whatever, I'm not using data. If you're on Wi-Fi, you're not using data. So you can check on your provider. You can go on their website and you can see how much data you've used. And my advice is to check that, and then instead of paying for unlimited, scale that back down to whatever you're actually using month to month, because the difference in price is usually significant. And so do that right away. And then once again, look for these, non big providers, because they use the same technology, they use the same towers. There might be some small degradation of service. I won't say there isn't, because there probably is. The way that the technology works, you get in a non-main carrier, the people that actually own the towers are going to put your request, your phone, your signal further down the line of connection importance. The reality is, though, that almost never matters. I guess if you're calling your mom on Mother's Day, like on peak hours, maybe. I don't know. I've never run into it, and guess what? That's what I do all the time. So, yeah, it's not particularly important that you have the most expensive cell phone coverage, because when you see those maps on the advertisements online, guess what? You're not usually driving in rural Wyoming, so it doesn't matter if they have coverage in rural Wyoming. Not useful, turns out.
Kind of redundant, Carl, to say rural Wyoming.
You just lost us all of Cheyenne, Tim. All of it.
All 7. Sorry, Cheyenne. I love you. I've been to visit. You're great.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's phone. Once again, super potential for savings there, because some people spend as much as $70 a month on their individual phone plan. In the United States, I don't know what it is internationally. I don't know what it is in Australia or the UK or wherever else. But I'm assuming unless there's a state phone service, you have competition there as well. So same type of idea. Look at the options. Consider the way that you use the phone, the amount of data you use, the amount of driving that you do, and that's going to affect how much data you actually need and whether or not you need service in between cities or whatever else. So,
of course, there's those people that are going to live in rural Wyoming, Tim. They're real people too. Phone service too. So, I mean, like, keeping in mind, it's okay to spend money on something that is going to be helpful for you. So thinking about where you can cut corners and where you don't want to cut corners is okay, as long as you're making enough money to afford those things that make life easier.
Absolutely. And actually, once I'm done like going through these items for the budget, I want to talk about kind of the top line of the budget, and that's the income. And just a quick teaser. I mean, we have some good variety in that top line number, even here on the podcast. So,
what are you insinuating?
Do we have to call Tim's a top line?
There's no line at all.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll come back to that. But yes, that is very important. And all right. So internet and phone. Now let's look at some of these other your traditional utilities. Once again, those are places where you think, well, I can't cut. And honestly, you're kind of right? You can't cut water. What are you going to do? You're going to tell your kids not to take a drink, not to take a shower? Come on. And I mean, you should be obviously cognizant and aware of whether or not you live in an area where having a massive lawn is actually a good idea. See Southern California and Arizona drought. But the water you use is probably not going to be able to be changed a significant amount. You can look into drip lines. You can look into well, that's about it as far as I can see about water conservation, other than just being aware, once again, where you live. I live in Southern California. Johnny and Tim both live in Arizona. While we have had a wet year so far, it's not generally a good idea for us to just blow through the water supply. So we have to be cognizant of that, but that's independent of the budget. But the other utilities are a little bit more things that you can control. So electricity. Once again, I live in Southern California. Solar panels are a super good idea, and we did that years ago here. They're not as easy to make the numbers line up in some other parts of the world as far as the amount of sun that you get, the amount of sunny days that you have, all those types of things. And then how the government wants to subsidize them, and or the amount of time that you're going to live there. There are a lot of calculations to do with solar panels, but they are a good idea and can make a huge difference in your electricity bill. And so we did solar for five years ago here in my home, and where I have people that I live around that have said that they have $400 or $500 electricity bills during the summer on the regular. I have traditionally had a electricity bill of somewhere between $50 and $100. And so it is a significant savings. And so electricity, solar panels is a good idea. Then there's what Tim was, or Johnny, you said it, turn off the lights.
Yeah, kill the lights.
Kill the lights, and then the type of lights you have, right? You have LED lights, it's going to save you some money. Think about the appliances that you use. How old are they? If you're going to replace them, can you replace them with a variety of appliance that is more, friendly to your electricity? They have obviously more efficient appliances these days.
That I just thought of in Arizona, and I think in a lot of places they have peak usage times. So you can actually get on a plan with the power company where you'll get charged more for using during the peak usage times, but then you get charged a lot less for using power during the non-usage time. So you can run your big appliances that take a lot of power, like your laundry, dishes, those types of things, when the usage is low, to save money that way. It takes a little bit of, being able to read a clock. So there's limitations.
Learn it from a layman, Johnny.
It can be harder to pull off for example, in a hot area like Arizona. In the summertime, it's a little tricky because, those peak hours for us are, from 3 in the afternoon to 6 in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day. So it can be a little dicey. You kind of cool the house beforehand, and then you just try to make it through. And that last hour can be a little toasty, but it is a savings. The utility companies are motivated to do that because they have it's better for them when they have consistent usage and consistent demand than when the demand goes up and down. And so they are, they're willing to pay to have, more usage during lower usage times and less usage during those higher usage times to kind of even it out. It's better on the infrastructure and
right. Yeah, that's something that obviously we have also in Southern California, the tiered pricing and also the time of use pricing. So certainly something to consider. And you have a lot of these appliances, your air conditioning, your whatever it is, your thermostat are in a lot of cases nowadays connected, Wi-Fi connected, and or has, they're all programmable. That I guarantee. So if you just make it so that you are cooling your house down earlier, and then kicking the AC back on after the peak hours. I wouldn't recommend doing it at the level where you are threatening your your health and well-being. So you also might have a spouse and or children to consider. So you can't always just say, we're not turning the air conditioning on. But consider, if it really is crazy, like maybe your AC units are 20 years old. Maybe if you invest in your AC, you're actually going to see a return on your electricity bill, right? So while replacing air conditioning units is pretty expensive, if your AC bill goes down $100 or $200 a month as a result of that, that's going to make a big difference over the course of multiple years. The other thing to watch out for is, at least in California, once again, the electricity company, the utilities companies often incentivize the type of behavior they want you to do, and so they will actually give you rebates and or they'll pay you to invest in particular things. For example, my family and I recently had to buy a new car. We drove the other one until we were warned that if we kept driving it, someone would get injured. But we did get a new one, and we got what I think, by the way, is super ideal right now. This is Carl's advice for new cars is a plug-in hybrid. Plug-in hybrids are super useful. They get you kind of the best of both worlds. If electricity is really expensive, then you can use gas. If gas is super expensive, plug it in. And then they also obviously are good for the environment. So we got a plug-in electric, a plug-in hybrid. And because we got that, even though we got ours used, because I don't buy anything new, our company, our utilities company, paid us for buying the car. And so look out for those types of things. There are incentives if the government or the utilities want to incentivize you to do a particular thing, they'll often have money involved. Okay, a couple more items here. So car insurance, 15 minutes can save you. No, just kidding. They don't pay us any money. I'm not advertising for anyone. Do consider your. What was that, Tim?
Oh, I was just laughing at your Geico joke there. I dropped it. Now we can.
Car insurance is something to consider. More than the company, and the company obviously get multiple quotes, but consider your needs as far as car insurance is concerned. Liability insurance is the most important. But even in that case, consider what you are bringing to the table. If you don't have a massive amount of wealth, then your limits, the bodily injury limits, your liability insurance on your car insurance can be lower, because guess what? You don't have anything that if you injure. So that those are. I used to work for a software company that did car insurance quotes. That's what we did. And so I'm familiar with a lot of the behind the scenes car insurance quoting rates and things like that. But the terminology and all that type of stuff, though it's been a decade now, I guess, since I did that. But bodily injury limits, that's your amount of liability insurance that the company, the car insurance company will pay in the case that you are found liable for bodily injury to someone else or even to your own people in your own car. And I guess that's also medical payments. But once again, the limits, often they're state mandated. There's like a minimum that you have to have. But if you don't have a massive wealth, then your limits can be lower, because the whole idea is let's say I'm driving and I hit someone and they are severely injured. They go to the hospital. Their bills are huge. The car insurance company has to, pay, and then they're up to their limit. The idea is, then I'm not particularly familiar with how frequently this could happen or whether or not it actually happens ever, but the person could go after you directly and try to sue you or try to get extra money from you. If you don't have any money to get, they're wasting their time. So your limits can be lower if you don't have funds to get, and otherwise get those limits higher. make sure you're covered. And then the comprehensive and collision coverages on your car insurance. Consider what kind of cars you drive. Are they old beater cars? Why are you insuring them like they are brand new cars? You don't need to. If they're nice new cars and you rely on them heavily, get them insured, but maybe check your deductible. Are you good with a $500 deductible? In a lot of cases, if you're okay financially, that's fine. Well, that's going to be a lot cheaper for you than having either zero deductible or $100 deductible. So look at your deductibles, those types of things, because once again, if you can knock $10 off your car insurance, there's $120 over a year, right? So just playing with it slightly and considering your actual needs in car insurance can save you, even if you don't want to swap car insurance providers. Mortgage. Johnny, did you have insight there?
Yeah, something that I don't know if all car insurance companies do this, but something our car insurance company does, we do it through USAA, and they have other benefits of being a USAA member rather than just the car insurance. Like you can get discounted rental cars, and they just have like other things that they can do. They can also help you buy new vehicles and at discounted prices and things like that. So anyway, I don't know if all, like I said, I don't know if all car insurance companies do that, but a lot of these companies that you're signing up and paying money to have benefits that you may not be aware of unless you ask.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good kind of financial and budget tip in general is if you're paying something for something already, see if there are benefits elsewhere that you're not using. And that's really useful. Let me hit one or two more, and then Tim has a story to tell us, I think. Okay, so mortgage. That's a huge one, right? Mortgage or rent. And I've been in periods of my life where obviously I've done both. Not both. I'm not that kind of high roller. I've done one or the other. And right now we own our home, so we have a mortgage. Before that, when we lived in San Diego, we rented for a number of years. Consider your mortgage you have more control over, for sure. If you have a mortgage, hopefully you consider that ahead of time, right? You've considered what is the rate I'm getting? What about the homeowners insurance that I have? All those types of things. And homeowners insurance is a reoccurring expense, and that expense changes, and you do pay for it. And it, in most cases, gets sucked into your home payment, your mortgage payment. So a lot of people don't think about it too much. Think about it. It's just like car insurance. You can do the same thing. You can get multiple quotes. You can move from place to place. You can consider what are my actual needs, deductibles, all those types of things. So listen to the part about car insurance and just stub in the word home insurance, and it pretty much all applies. So that's one that changes your mortgage payment yearly. And then obviously the biggest ones are when rates change. Do you need to refinance? If you bought in the last 3 years, I wouldn't recommend refinancing right now. Bad idea. But if you are buying right now, there's a good, who knows where mortgage rates are going to go, right? Historically, they've been as high as, 13, 14%, I think. And right now they're sitting at about 6 or 7%, which is about the middle of the road. But maybe they drop. And when they drop, if you're in the financial position to be able to refinance, that's ideal. Because then that makes a big difference. So make sure you're on top of those things and aware of how the decisions that you're making about your mortgage affect your payment, and that those are things that you can affect with just good decisions. And there's what is that insurance that you have to pay when you don't have a full down payment? When you have less than like a 20% down payment, guys, there's like a
EMI. It's
EMI? Okay, that's it.
Yeah, and what's that stand for? Something mortgage insurance. It's mortgage insurance.
Right. Yes, it's a government having you pay to cover your own risk for them giving you money, which is kind of confusing. because whatever. Anyway, but if you have 20% down, you don't have to pay that. If you don't have 20% down, you do usually have to pay that, but not always. That's one of those types of things that you can kind of fiddle with, you can play with, you can haggle about and say, well, what if you take that PMI off and you give me an extra, and you bump up my interest rate 0.15% or something, and so then it's a numbers game for them, right? Then they're trying to figure out, well, is that going to end up being more profitable for my company or you? And so you're playing off their desire and your knowledge of your future decisions, right? Because the PMI, generally you're gonna pay it down, and it's gonna roll off your mortgage within the first like 5 or 6 or 7 years in a 30-year mortgage. If you're planning on being in that home for 30 years and not refinancing, then they're gonna end up making money on you if you up your mortgage, your interest rate in order to not have PMI. But if you move within the first decade, and instead of having that mortgage insurance, you just paid a slightly higher interest rate, you're going to save money. So once again, it's just something to consider.
Something else
Okay.
about with,
Yeah.
mortgage versus rent, for, we thought a lot about this as we were students in different states. And one thing that you got to remember is a mortgage is the least amount of money you'll pay for your home every month, and rent is the most you'll ever pay. So everything should be covered by your renter. You have rights as a renter, and and they should fix the things that break, and do the home maintenance and all that stuff for you. If it's like changing a filter, a lot of places will require you to do the small maintenance like that. But if it's anything other than that, like as a renter, you need to not do it yourself. You need to have the other person do it. Otherwise, you're dumping money into a house that's not yours. And then remembering that, your houses can be a huge liability. Like a lot of money goes into your house every month. So just remember that, and a lot of people treat it like a big asset, and it's not always an asset for you. So just thinking about like how much money is actually going into that, and is it worth it? And can we live in a more modest home and be happy? And I truly think you can. So just remembering some of those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Speaking of modest homes, Tim, I'm sorry.
You speak the truth.
No, Tim has a very nice home in Arizona. Okay.
It's in modern. It's nice. Like we're like city mouse here. Actually, probably not country mouse.
No, Tim. Yes, you wanted to share with us kind of some insights into maybe some financial decisions that you've made, and maybe we can also share some anecdotal information that about stuff that we've done. But yeah, Tim, what tragedy have you led you to where you are now?
Yeah, well, yes, gather round. Okay. Well, and mostly this, I'm just going to narrate a little bit to illustrate the point of playing the long game. And we talked about kind of all of these kind of small scale things you can do to improve your financial outlook. But I think all of this is operating on the assumption that you're where you want to be financially, and just trying to improve things. If you're in financially difficult straits, or if you're just maybe young or at a transition and you don't know what's ahead, I would just one of the best things you can do for your budget is to play the long game. Not just thinking about how can I save money on my rent or on my car insurance, but how can I put myself in a good financial position 5 years down the road and 10 years down the road. And usually these are long-term things, finding a good career and getting good skills and training. And but they require a little bit of planning ahead and a little bit of sacrifice now. So if you pay attention to that, you can put yourself in a good position. So, and I'll just use myself as an example. So I was in college, and I remember I was working 20 hours a week at Little Caesars, making $7 an hour. And
Wait, you made 7? I remember you making less than 7.
oh, it was, I think it was 7. Maybe I started at less and got bumped up to 7, but most of the time I think it was 7. Plus free pizzas on occasion. That was a bunch of
Yes.
college guys. But I remember my aunt talking to me once, and when I was living in her basement, and she said, "Tim, why are you doing this? You're killing yourself." Because I was taking a full class load and then some of, you know, some difficult courses, and doing this extra work on the side, and other stuff as well, and it was a challenge. So and in retrospect, I think she was right that $7 an hour did not go very far. But the good news is I was playing the long game. I was getting myself a college degree to get into a career I wanted to get into that paid a good deal more than Little Caesars, being a teacher, which, Little Caesars wasn't paying me very much. If being a teacher was a significant upgrade. But the point remains that I'm doing a lot better than if I hadn't spend the time preparing myself, getting those skills and qualifications to get myself a better job. So if you're working in say, a lower paying job somewhere or something, sure, work to make savings now and to improve your budget outlook now, but you might also look into what can you do in the long term to prepare yourself. Can you maybe do some studying? I have a family member who is getting some computer training to make herself more marketable and find better job opportunities. And there's things, and I'm not even talking about college necessarily. College is a great option for many people, but sometimes you can just go get some training on technology, or go take training to work as a technician in a railroad. Learn how to weld or something like this. Find something that interests you and that you think you could enjoy, and then it may take some sacrifice of time and money. Now, maybe you have to give up all of your streaming subscriptions to be able to afford the training, and live a couple of years scrimping, as hard as that might be. But if you kind of have that long game in mind, then you'll be in much better position down the road. So make those sacrifices now, and do the research to find what skills and training and what jobs are out there. A lot of people just assume, oh, I'm going to get a college degree and then everything will be fine, not realizing that there are a vast difference in opportunities between some degrees and others.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, Johnny, so Tim's a teacher, and it's good work. Let's not make all teachers feel bad about themselves. And some teachers.
Carl, don't worry about that. We already do. So
you can make a good living as a teacher.
You can.
You can make a living as a teacher.
There you go. Point of work.
And it is good work, right? Like, I've had great teachers. Everyone's had good experiences with a teacher and probably a bad experience with the teacher before. Tim's generally the good variety. So good job, Tim. However, for those of you looking to not live the Spartan lifestyle that Tim has chosen, Johnny, Tim was talking about moving from like working and kind of a lower job and kind of planning for the future. That seems to have been kind of what you did.
Yeah, I planned on going to medical school, and took a pretty long road to get there. And there's mistakes that I made along the way, like I would try to save up money and then pay for classes so that I didn't have student loan debt. And now that I look back on it, all those student loans in undergrad would have been just a drop in the bucket compared to the medical student loans. So it probably didn't matter that much. And I probably could have gotten through college 3 or 4 years earlier, which 3 or 4 years as making a doctor's salary. And you have to think about it as not your first 3 or 4 first years, but your 3 or 4 years prior to retirement. That's the money that I lost out on. So, like those small student loans, could that have made me a big income if I would have thought about the long game? Yeah, it probably would have. I'm not saying that every single person that goes to undergrad and is getting a degree should go get a whole bunch of student loans and just live that way. I don't think that that is wise unless you have a specific reason you're going to college that's going to give you a return. So you have to remember what you're in for and what kind of returns that's going to give you. But yeah, I mean, as a physician, we put in a lot of time, and there's a lot of people in the medical community, if you want to go into something medical, that don't have to put in that amount of time. So if you're interested in something in the medical community, consider other things other than just becoming a doctor. That's a very challenging way to get into the medical field. There's nursing and medical assistants and ultrasound techs and respiratory therapists. There's all sorts of different physical therapy. There's all sorts of different types of programs that you can do, and different trainings that you can do that make you very valuable. And there's even office staff and people that do billing. And my mom's worked in the medical field for over 20 years doing medical billing, and she's very competitive in the job market because she knows that, those systems that are very complicated and try to, I don't know how to say that in a nice way, so I'm going to move on. But yeah, so there's thinking about the long run and keeping the end in mind can help you make smart decisions now for the future. So yeah, there's things that I wish I would have changed for sure. But I eventually got to where I am, and there's something to say about the experiences you go through and what that, what type of a person that makes you. But it doesn't necessarily help your budget to go through those experiences.
Right. But yeah, like you said, you both of you talking about, I mean, this long game, the idea of thinking ahead, and with the reality, with the budget, we're talking through, mandatory spending, utilities, saving $100, $1,000 here or there. If the difference in salary between someone that's got a high school education and a college degree, or a college degree and a graduate degree is, orders of magnitude, right? We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And there's no magic word that you can say to your internet provider to help them give you $10,000. All right, that's not going to happen. So
what about pretty? I've heard that can work.
Pretty, please. No, so and of course there are multiple things to consider when choosing your employment, right? Tim decided that he wanted to be sad, and some people, that's your decision. Sorry, I can't help myself.
That's
Poor
right.
Tim. He's like doing such good work and working with the troubled youth of our day.
Yeah.
Hacking him around.
I will say this: if you are considering teaching, just consider carefully. For all the joking we do about it, it is a challenging field where the compensation is not maybe at the equal to the level of challenge. That doesn't mean it's not satisfying in many ways. And I always like to think about the longest game of all. I think about myself, when I'm on my deathbed, and I, look back, and all the money I earned or haven't doesn't really matter at all. Looking back on a life, of doing something that I felt mattered will be the most valuable. And so I think, keep that in mind more than anything. And remember, for all the talk of money, your time and the life you have is the most important thing to budget. And But yeah, of course, I think there's many of us for whom sacrificing your body and sanity in the public school system is probably not the best way to find satisfaction. So there's a lot of ways you can look back on a life with fulfillment and satisfaction. So
Yes. Yes. Different podcast though, Tim. All right. Just take your lumps. All right.
but not
Don't tell us
much.
how much better you are than us. All right. I might build software that only affects a few people, but it pays me well.
Well, this whole supporting a family business, pish posh,
No. So obviously we've
picked on Carl for having 17 kids yet.
I only slightly outrank anyone on this podcast in number of children. So no. The
Carl,
okay, so Tim, what?
I will make you this promise right now. If you will have 17 kids, I will pay you college expenses of the last 5.
Tim, you've made me so many financial promises over the years that have come to naught that
is a promise I guarantee I will not break.
Like I promise you, I'll drive safely. I won't get in a car accident.
Yeah, exactly. Tim, I think, owes us two cars plus like 15 years of interest. So
save money by not letting you drive.
Okay. Getting back on the thread here. Budget. The top line matters the most, right? And wherever you are right now in your top line, so whatever vertical you've chosen, or maybe you're still looking, right? So maybe you're looking at Johnny, and Johnny's a doctor, and you're thinking doctors make a lot of money. If you can find interest and desire, awesome. That field is great. There's, like Johnny said, there's a lot of opportunity. You don't even just have to be a doctor. A lot of opportunity and a lot of opportunity to make a good amount of money. Software, where I am at, same type of thing, less money, but still a good amount of money, and a quicker runway, right, to get into the field. And even teaching, where obviously teachers generally, at least in the United States, don't make a lot. If Tim wanted to move from teaching to administration and from administration to government, for example, like President of the United States,
why not?
There are from the career path of teacher, you can go if you want to affect your top line, your amount of money you're bringing in. You can do things. For example, Tim's dad, who was a lifelong educator, moved from being a teacher to being an administrator, and then decided that in order to bring in more money, he wanted to go international. And that was a huge benefit to them. And they not only did they obviously appreciate the money, they also loved the experience. Right, Tim?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anywhere you are, you can affect that top line number. And if you are happy at the number that you're at, then you probably don't need to, right? There have been studies that show that I'm going to get the number wrong, and since inflation may have changed, but it's something like $70,000 in U.S. dollars. At that's like the magic number, where any more that you make per year than that is doesn't affect your happiness. And
therefore, I am making sure carefully to keep my income below that level.
And I don't know how I have not read that study, or at least I did. If I did, it was a long time ago. As far as whether or not that's a 2-income household, and they're assuming that you then make $140,000. I don't know but there is a number. What I'm saying, the point is, there is a number statistically, scientifically.
It's something around there, like $70,000 a year, and I don't think it's a 2-income house thing. I think it's the money that you bring in, $70,000 a year, that after doesn't matter as much.
Right. Yeah. So
it's the law of diminishing returns applied to income, right?
Right.
Once you're able to meet your necessities and maybe some luxuries that improve your lifestyle, at some point it becomes less. If I buy a third car, what's it going to do for me?
Right. Yep. So If you're at that point already, then maybe some of these budget things can be fun. They can but they're not entirely necessary. A lot of us aren't there, right? And that's the whole point is, look at your budget closely, because that can help you leverage the money that you're making better. And it can also set you up for the future. And then also always consider that top line number. And if you need to go ask for a raise, you go do that. Because you're worth unless you're like a 16-year-old person or 17-year-old person just getting into the field, just getting into basic job experience. If you've been there a couple of years, then know your value, know your worth, be worth something, work hard, and then make sure that you are being paid a amount of money that is appropriate and will give you the type of lifestyle that you need.
If you're the hardest worker in the company and you make the same as the laziest person in the company, that is not okay. Like, you need to go ask for more money. You need to be compensated for the work that you do.
Absolutely.
So
unless you're a teacher.
Unless you're a teacher,
Yeah.
Then you get blessing people's lives.
Yeah.
Teacher payment is Venezuelan economy.
Carl, if you could, when you upload this video, if you could have like a little joke about teachers meter on the side, and we could ratchet it up every time, so we can see what our tally is.
Yeah. It's not enough yet. It never will. It never will be enough.
Never gonna hit that bell at the top.
Podcast. We're really offending them.
Okay. Last thing we're going to talk about on the budget, and the biggest part of the budget is your discretionary spending. So we talked about mandatory spending. That's those utilities, your home, and your food. And I guess we didn't really talk about food, but that to me straddles the line, right? A lot of people treat all food as if it were mandatory spending. And it turns out, if you are eating out every meal, that is not mandatory spending, that is discretionary spending. So consider, once again,
don't eat ramen every day to save money, because like, if you lessen your life by 15 years, that's not going to help you either.
Yeah.
Another mistake I made in college.
Yeah, don't. And look at them now, kids.
This is this is also, by the way, insight that you only get to learn from a layman. Not only getting budget, you're also getting medical advice simultaneously. So
we could give cooking advice. Do you remember, Carl, my ramen noodles recipes that I would make when we were in college?
I do.
Good stuff.
I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat remembering your recipes.
Some chopped cabbage, mixed in some beans, and egg. Yeah. Really you can try it.
You shouldn't. We will never do a podcast on Tim's recipes.
Ooh, that would be good.
All right.
I've got some, seriously. And then merch. We can make a cookbook.
Okay.
And sell it.
All right. But parenthetically, before I talk about a little more discretionary spending, Tim's wife texted me some updated information. So real-time fact checking. She said the highest interest rate for mortgages got all the way up to 18.45%, which, by the way, is insane.
Yeah.
So those of you,
that's crazy.
Those of you getting mortgages right now, feeling really bad for yourself that you're getting like a 7% interest rate. Yeah, I guess compared to like the 2.99 it was a couple of years ago. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Look at your parents or grandparents and ask them, like when they were buying a house in the 80s, and then you'll feel better.
Buying a house on a credit card.
Yeah, it's crazy.
18%. Yikes.
Yeah, wild. Okay, discretionary spending. So back to restaurants. If you are eating out all the time, I recommend don't. Not only is it going to shorten your life, it's also going to crimp your budget. So, be smart. Go to the store. Go to the grocery store. Buy fresh fruits and vegetables. Or as Tim would have you do, grow okra in your backyard and eat it plain. Actually, don't even pick it. Just eat it like a cow.
Okra is such an underestimated vegetable. It's really cool.
I don't
It's
think cows
really
eat
good.
okra.
Yeah.
I like pickled okra. It's delicious.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, we're putting that in our cookbook.
That's disgusting.
Have you ever tried pickled okra?
No, and I never will. I can guarantee you that I will never have pickled okra.
When we go to Alabama, we're gonna try some pickled okra.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe.
First thing on the list.
Okay. Yes. Back to discretionary spending. So we've got all variety, right? So we could make this a very long podcast talking about all the different ways you can burn money. Be smart. Recognize that you only have so many hours in a day. And if you are spending money on the things that you don't use, you are lighting money on fire and watching it burn. Heck, you're not even watching it burn. At least there'd be some like you'd enjoy that. Like there's some benefit of watching money burn. You're actually lighting it on fire and leaving the room. Like there's no benefit to this. So if you have multiple subscriptions that you don't use, be it gym memberships, streaming services, whatever it is, like some of them can be.
Started using the gym membership yet, but we're going to very soon.
Hey, everyone's done it, right? Everyone's done it. I remember having a gym membership, and I remember getting a call from the gym saying, "Hey, Mr. Christensen, we haven't seen you lately. Would you consider coming back in?" I'm paying them monthly. They don't care, right? But they're trying to, whatever. Anyway, it's one of those calls you just don't want to get. You're like, come on. I know what the scale says, buddy. All right. I don't. But yeah, everyone's done it. But be aware of, those subscriptions that you just have. Go on your credit card, see where that money's going out every month. Check your credit card statements. Make sure that you know, okay, this is where I'm using the money. This is something that either brings me joy, happiness, is useful, is an investment, right? Because the biggest point in discretionary spending is that's money that you're using to enrich your life, hopefully. So if you're a vacationer, great, go on vacation, enjoy that. But realize that will probably mean that you have to cut somewhere else. And so recognize that it's not a all of the above, it's a either or in most cases. Tim?
And if I could insert here that you don't have to think of it as an all or nothing thing. Sometimes you just can think of it in terms of I'm postponing something to meet a goal. Maybe I'll cancel some of my subscriptions and memberships and monthly fees for maybe I make a plan. I'm going to cancel it for the next year, and I'm going to take all that extra money and I'm going to use it to pay down a debt, pay off my credit card, pay off a auto loan, or pay down my mortgage, and then I put myself in better position, years down the road. And then I say, okay, now that I'm in better position, I'm going to go ahead and pick back up those things. So it's not like, oh, I can't have these things. Sometimes it's just, I'm going to wait to have these things and sacrifice that to meet a budget goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
that feels more rewarding than paying off a debt. I'll tell you what.
Oh yeah.
When you're like,
yeah.
like we don't have that car payment anymore. You're like, wow, that's nice.
That's yeah. All of a sudden you got hundreds of dollars a month, and you're like, yeah. It's awesome.
And one warning, when you get to that moment, a lot of people experience what we call lifestyle creep, where you've all of a sudden got $400 more a month that you're making, and it makes you feel rich. And so what you do is you start to act like that, and you start to spend all that money, and pretty soon that gets baked into your new budget, and all of a sudden you're not making any more progress towards anything than you were before. You just have more stuff hanging onto your budget. So if make sure you watch out for that, and instead of letting that money get frittered away, turn it to your next goal. Always have a budget goal. Okay, now that I've done that, now that I've paid off my car, I'm going to turn that money towards paying off my house, or I'm going to invest that money in my retirement so I have a better retirement account. Anyways, always have a budget goal to be working towards, and watch out for lifestyle creep.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
It's also
Last.
a creep.
Say that again, Johnny.
I said Tim's also a lifestyle creep.
That's right. That's what they called me when I went down to the country club.
It's also what your students call you.
Get out of here, you lifestyle creep.
Yeah. So once again, recognize and be very real with the lifestyle that you can afford. Very often people want to put up a front, either that makes them feel better about themselves. Don't buy into that garbage. Be happy with what you can afford. And if whoever you're around doesn't respect that, get new friends.
The keeping up with the Joneses game is just going to lead to sadness. Doesn't matter.
Yep. So just think, as you're looking through your budget, as you're looking at, lessons for the kids and sports and all those types of things, recognize what's going to enrich their lives, your life, what's going to be worthwhile investments, and that's your discretionary spending, right? Make sure that you're using it and using it well. And don't be afraid to spend money in the cases that it's going to be an investment in the future. It's an investment in your quality of life, but also don't feel obligated to spend because of some social, limitation you're putting on yourself or whatever it is. So make smart decisions. And we could go through a whole podcast about discretionary spending, but the last thing I want to say is just consider using interest in your benefit instead of paying interest, right? Either it's going to work for you or against you. Your mortgage is always going to work against you. Unless you're independently wealthy, you have a mortgage. Most people have a car payment. Eventually, hopefully, you can pay that off, right? And then at that point, you can save to buy a new car with cash. Awesome. But outside of those things, hopefully, you can save enough money to not have interest work against you. Instead, take your money, either put it in some type of investment account, right? Put it in somewhere where you're earning interest, where instead of paying the bank 7% for your mortgage, you're earning 5 or 6%, and all of a sudden you're getting paid for your money. So that will once again up your budget and the amount of money that you have. So take a look at that top line number. Take a look at the mandatory spending, the discretionary spending, and talk through with your spouse, your children, and have a real conversation with yourself about what's making your life better and where are you burning money, and cut that out. Last thoughts, Tim or Johnny?
Yeah, Tim, we have to cancel your charity payment. I'm sorry.
Dang.
No, I think discretionary money, like, why do we make money? And I feel like it's to have experiences, right? So that's what's important to me. And if I'm have extra money and I'm using it to enrich my life in some way that's meaningful to me, then I'm using it in a way that I should. So I grew up, in a very, very modest home. We actually had 5 kids that lived in a 2-bedroom trailer with my mom and dad in the middle of Alaska forest. So very rural, very small. We were very poor. Like, all of our clothes were hand-me-downs from neighbors, and so a lot of times when I go to spend money, I feel guilty for spending money, and sometimes it's okay. It's okay to spend money, and it's okay to do some of those things. You don't have to feel bad about spending money as long as you're doing it in a way that is enriching your life in some way. Anyway, that's the last thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Johnny. Tim?
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was just thinking about our timeshare and all of our wave runners.
both things that teachers do not have. So we know you're lying.
Sure. I won't tell the story about how we a bunch of us were at a timeshare and they invited us to like the little meeting to see if we wanted to own a timeshare. But when they saw my income, I was actually uninvited to the meeting.
You were asked to leave, like in front of everyone. They're like, you sir, you need to leave. You don't belong.
Go live in a trailer in Alaska.
Yeah, don't do that. Not recommended. But it did help our creativity.
I'll bet.
Right.
No,
All right.
I echo what Johnny said. All these things are, I would say, it's wisdom to be prudent and thoughtful, ambitious, but it's also wisdom to recognize that the things that matter lie underneath the finance, and don't get too caught up in it all. It's all ashes and dust in the end. So, wow, that's kind of grim almost, but
for our YouTube viewers, I was crying just a little bit for you, Tim.
That's right.
That's just.
That was beautiful. Beautifully said, Tim.
Yes. No. So hopefully this has been somewhat useful. If only for the last hour, if you have tuned us out but been thinking about your own budget, then great. Final thing, Johnny, I hadn't ever thought about this before. You lived in Alaska. The one area in Canada that has never listened to us is the Yukon territories. You have to have had people that you knew from the Yukon territories.
Johnny, we need you to drop more moose illusion.
Yeah, come on. We've got.
They're probably a few years behind and maybe don't have the internet yet. So they probably downloaded it and then their friend copied it onto a CD. And in 10 years from now, they're listening to this episode in the Yukon territory. So we have listeners there, but it's in the future.
Okay, we have future. Yes, we're claiming it. We're gonna.
It's on CD.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Tim. And we'll be back again next podcast. Next podcast will be with Mick McGurr, our lawyer friend. He's going to talk to us about law, the various parts of law. So tune back in for that one, and we'll see you then.